Okay, moving on. This kind of has to do with the Corey Davis and all the weapons we were just mentioning. Corey Davis, Rashard Matthews coming off a great year, probably his most productive year in the league. Picked up Eric Decker in free agency. We have DeMarco Murray, Derrick Henry in the backfield, Jonnu Smith, Delaney Walker, all these new weapons, dynamic receivers, playmakers. I'm talking about Mularkey here, though, and how he's going to adapt all these playmakers to a style that he's normally not used to. He's kind of a comparison to that 99 team again, kind of Fisher, kind of a strong defense, pound the rock kind of guy. Do you think this is going to inhibit him, or how do you think he's going to adapt with all these new weapons? Because Fisher kind of fell to the wayside as the league kind of like passed him by, and he wouldn't adapt.
That's not why he fell to the wayside. I mean, I would argue that Fisher did kind of come to his senses when McNair was ready and Eddie George had the bad toe. It's a famous story that David Clymer wrote a lot about one of them brought a bottle of wine over to the other guy's house, and they had a big conversation about kind of unshackling McNair.
But that was the only option at the case because you said Eddie George had the toe.
Yeah. Well, listen,
now Mularkey has a bunch of options. Yeah, more options than he's ever had in his head coaching, career.
And I think in exotic smash mouth he'll be able to use those options. But it's not turning into a 3-wide team. This team ran the third fewest 3-wide snaps in the league last year. And I don't think that number is going to shoot up dramatically. It's a 2 tight end run first team that needs a more dynamic receiving core to give it more options, to be more dynamic in base, to be more dynamic when they do go 3 wide, and to give them some more options. So look, but first and foremost, 2 tights and a running back, and try to stop them. And that, they're aiming. DeMarco Murray told us, I think on the radio last week, we're trying to be the most physical team in the league. That's their MO. And Corey Davis and all those other guys are going to have to block. They're going to have to block a lot. And Mularkey preaches to his receivers that, if you block a lot, then it comes back to you in the form of catches. And if you don't, it doesn't. And he had Hines Ward when he was offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh, who's maybe, arguably, the best blocking receiver ever. He certainly wants his guys to aspire as much to be like Hines Ward in that department as to be like, Odell Beckham in the catch department.
But so do you think it would be a negative for the team to not kind of balance it out a little more, run and pass? I know he wants to be run first and all these, but he's brought in a bunch of dynamic receivers. I mean, Eric Decker, a solid veteran. I know he's getting kind of old, and he's coming off an injury, but pair that with Corey Davis, Rashard Matthews, Taywan Taylor, Tajay Sharp, who everyone was high on last year. I know he's dealing with an injury, and I almost feel like we should be adapting more of a balance to the run and pass game, because the league is definitely trending more towards high-octane pass-first offenses. Those are the teams that you see winning the Super Bowl: Falcons, Patriots, Pittsburgh Steelers.
Falcons didn't win one, by the way.
Playing deep into the playoffs.
Yeah. Okay. I tend to agree with you. That's the kind of football I like. That's the kind of football I want to see. They've decided, between their philosophy, Robinson and Mularkey, and between the way the league is shaped, that the easier way to get faster, the faster way to get better.
We'll let that one slide.
Yeah. The easier way to get faster, better, is to rely on kind of the old formula, where they're going to pound the ball, then pass off of that, play sound defense. Jacksonville's now going to try to do the exact same thing with Fournette, build an offensive line, run with Fournette.
He just throws interceptions.
Yeah, that's true. Mariota's going to be better.
Without their left tackle.
Eventually, I think that we'll probably find ourselves in a position where we say, we'd really like to see him cut it loose a little bit more with Marcus. I don't know to what degree that happens. Will it be more this year? Yeah. Is it going to be as much more as a lot of us who like throw it down the field football want? I suspect not.
So you think this model that he's building, this run first, blue collar, strong defense can be great in the league with how the great teams are producing?
I think you can win a Super Bowl with it.
I think you can win a Super Bowl.
Listen, I'm a big receiver guy, but name the last biggest name receiver on a Super Bowl winning team. It's not as easy an exercise as most people think it is.
Would you say
Julian Edelman? But I mean, Julian Edelman's an unconventional.
Hogan had a better postseason than Julian Edelman.
And Julian Edelman's hardly your conventional number one receiver, right?
True.
That's not Julio Jones.
But they still, Tom Brady spreads the ball around.
Yeah.
It's a pass first team.
You could say Demaryius Thomas for the Broncos, but that offense really
wasn't anything.
I mean,
that was carried by their defense.
Yeah,
but,
that was Eric Decker too.
And Eric too. Or no, was he on that team?
I'm just curious to see how it's going to pan out. I mean, I'm a fan of the strong run game and the strong physical defense, but now that we have this influx of talent in the receiving core, I almost feel like we should kind of start leaning more towards that, especially kind of let it.
This is going to be one of the big conversations that we have all year long, I think. But hopefully you're having the conversation. Hopefully for the Titans' sake, you're having the conversation out of wins. And if you're having the conversation out of wins, then they're going to say, well, why would we go away from leaning on DeMarco and trying to get Derrick Henry the ball in 4-minute drills late in the game to kill the clock? Why would we get away from that if it's working?
And it is. I mean, he does.
So what I'm saying, sorry to interrupt, is for you to get what you want, they probably have to do badly first. And so
well, it's not what I want, because I like Mularkey. As a non-Titans fan, how do you feel about Mularkey? Because a lot of Titans fans are really hot and cold on him. We start losing a few games, everyone's like, fire him, get rid of him.
Because obviously, if we lose games, people are going to throw the blame on him.
Especially if we lose games running the ball.
I think he bought himself a great degree of goodwill last year. I covered him. Yeah. I covered the whole division for a while, and when he was in Jacksonville in 2012, I covered him, and he was tough. And he had a lot of stuff in Jacksonville. I've talked about this. I'll be brief on it. Your helmets had to be lined up during warm-ups, and you've got fined $10,000 if you talked about injuries, and you had to stand an exact certain way for the national anthem. And listen, I understand that's kind of instilling what you want in the team, but what he came to realize on his third chance was not everything is as important as I think it is, and therefore I'm going to let some of that stuff go in order to control the really important stuff. So I kind of equate it to a space capsule. You got a lot of things on the space capsule to get it in space, but once it's up there, right, it drops off all this stuff, and then you're down to just what you need to be in space. And he's down to just what he needs to instill his philosophy and have his football team, and he's let that other stuff fall off. If a guy talks about an injury, it's not going to kill him. And he's a candid guy. I think he's done a really good job at what the Titans needed more than anything, which was an identity. The last regime couldn't tell you their identity. True. They said versatility was their identity. That's not an identity.
So you think that was more Mularkey than John Robinson?
I think it was them in unison together, and I think it's been a marriage that's been very good right out of the gate.
So back to that analogy. That sounds like an analogy you've used before, possibly. Okay, I was about to say it was very well thought out. Like you plod. Well, I have to be honest. I've listened to your show twice, Midday 180. Once when I called in, and then twice for about 5 minutes a day on the way here.
How bad did I?
So
I got to be honest.
I didn't hear anything about that, but you don't watch our shows, so we don't listen to your shows. So
I'm glad we can come together.
It seems he's a listener. You're missing out.
I'm the glue, guys. I'm the glue to this team.
Well, I don't know how big a Titans fan he is if he's not listening to Midday 180, which has the best Titans coverage in the city. So,
well, see,
what are you up to?
That's an opinion. That's an opinion.
What are you up to?
You haven't searched for Titans Tube on the internet.
What are you up to between 12 and 3?
Let's move on. That's some good stuff about Mularkey. So you're pretty high on him. You like what he's doing with the team.
Yeah, I have a great deal of respect for him, and I confess, I wrote at ESPN when they hired him, I wrote Mike Mularkey is a spectacularly uninspired hire, and ESPN took out spectacularly.
He was definitely the safe.
They took out
hire.
Spectacularly, which they shouldn't have.
No.
But at the time, I was like everybody else. But the guy, deservingly, has won a lot of people over. I'm one of them.
They probably took out spectacularly because you misspelled it. But anyways, besides that.